What began as an ordinary day for the workers at Kader Toy Factory quickly descended into complete disaster. A fire broke out in the factory's building complex, spreading with alarming speed through its poorly constructed buildings. Over 1,000 workers, many locked inside or unaware of the imminent danger, were suddenly trapped as flames engulfed the factory. The complete lack of safety measures and appalling level of negligence became vividly clear as the Kader Toy Factory became the site of one of the deadliest industrial fires in history. On May 10, 1993, well over 1,500 people, mostly poor young women, were working at the toy company owned by the Kader Industrial Company located in the Samphran district of Nakhon Pathom, Thailand. The factory manufactured an array of toys for export, primarily for distribution in the United States, for popular toy brands such as Toys R Us, Mattel, Disney, and Tyco. They specialized in making toys of well-known characters such as Cabbage Patch and Bart Simpson dolls, as well as other stuffed toys. The factory belonged to a compound of buildings, including offices, storage and maintenance buildings, and the primary factory buildings. Building 1, Building 2, and Building 3 were each part of the same E-shaped building, which were each connected by a single corridor on the side of the structure. Building 4 was a separate structure, which was connected to Building 3 only by a second-floor walkway. The company already had a poor track record of safety violations, particularly involving fire. The Kader Industrial Thailand Company Limited had previously registered as a business in January of 1989, but that license was revoked when a fire destroyed their brand new plant 7 months later in August of 1989. The factory was subsequently rebuilt and permitted to reopen by the Thai Ministry of Industry in July 1990. After the new facility opened, they experienced several smaller fires, including one in February of 1993, which caused significant damage to Building 3. Both the fire in February of 1993 and the one in 1989 were caused by ignition of polyester or cotton material used in the manufacturing process of dolls. A labor inspector performed an investigation of the site following the 1993 fire and issued a warning, advising that the factory needed safety equipment, safety officers, and an emergency plan. Nonetheless, the factory kept on with no changes to its practices. On Monday, May 10, 1993, at about 4 p.m., a small fire was discovered on the first floor of Building 1, in a location where finished products were stored. Instead of calling emergency services right away, some of the workers and security guards attempted to extinguish the fire themselves, likely desensitized to the serious fire risk due to their previous exposure to such events. Their attempts were futile, and they finally decided to contact the police and fire department about 20 minutes later at 4:21 p.m. While awaiting the emergency response, the workers continued their efforts to extinguish the flames, but by this time, they were growing and beginning to spread. Despite being outside their jurisdiction, the Bangkok Fire Services responded, as well as the local services for the Nakhon Pathom province. Smoke billowed through the buildings. In a factory filled with highly flammable materials in each building, the fire would spread quickly. However, despite the flames growing, the fire alarm failed to sound in Building 1. Furthermore, the security guards insisted that the employees stay at their workstations, that it was a small fire and that it would be under control shortly. Finally, by 4:40 p.m., the first fire trucks arrived on scene after having been delayed by heavy traffic on the way to the factory. By this point, Building 1 was in serious condition as the flames had severely intensified and spread to the upper floors. It was already on the verge of collapsing. Because of the factory layout, a majority of the workers were located on the 3rd and 4th floors of Building 1. 1,100 people total between the two floors. The fire blocked one of the main stairwells in the building, and it collapsed shortly after. The employees were forced to rush to the south side to get to the only stairwell, making it the only means of egress for those 1,100 workers. With the building collapsing around them, blinded by suffocating smoke, and trapped by the fire closing in around them, there was nowhere to go. Some workers opted to jump out of the upper floor windows to escape, many suffering serious injuries, others not surviving their fall. The fire spread to adjoining buildings 2 and 3, fueled by the highly flammable materials inside the building, making it much more difficult to contend with. At 5:14 p.m., Building 1 completely collapsed, trapping many who were still inside, followed by Building 2 at 5:30 p.m. and Building 3 at 6:05 p.m. Fortunately, the fire alarms in Building 2 and 3 functioned as intended, providing ample warning for evacuation. No victims were claimed in them. However, rescuing the workers in Building 1 would not be an easy task. The efforts by the firefighters were significant. Multiple fire departments combined their forces to combat the blaze. A total of 300 firemen and 50 fire trucks were involved. Due to their amazing efforts, they were able to prevent the fire from spreading to any other buildings and had it extinguished by 7:45. Of course, the fire was not the only priority. The area surrounding the toy factory was heavily congested with traffic, making it difficult to transport the injured to hospitals. This was greatly compounded by the fact that the sheer number of injured far exceeded the capacity of any of the region's hospitals. By the following day, 469 workers injured in the buildings were distributed among 22 different hospitals, suffering from a myriad of medical conditions from smoke inhalations, burns, broken bones, and skull fractures. In all, 188 people died in the Kader Toy Factory fire, 174 women and 14 men, 20 of whom died in hospital after being transported from the scene. The rest died trapped in Building 1. It took a significant recovery effort, which necessitated the use of 6 large hydraulic cranes and as many as 200 soldiers from the 1st Developmental Regiment. It took 2 weeks to recover the remaining 168 bodies from the rubble. During this grueling recovery period, they were forced to create a makeshift mortuary where relatives could come to identify their loved ones, most of whom were burned beyond recognition. Investigations following the fire revealed the dire safety conditions at the Kader Toy Factory. As previously mentioned, the fire alarm in Building 1 simply didn't work. Although there was plenty of evidence to support immediate evacuation, which should have been facilitated by those in charge, having a functioning fire alarm would have certainly increased the urgency to flee. It is not known if the alarm failed to go off or simply wasn't installed in the first place. Additionally, the workers were not subjected to regular fire safety drills, which fueled confusion during the event. It was also discovered that there were no sprinkler systems installed in any of the buildings. The steel supports used to construct the building were not fireproofed, contributing to the rapid collapse of the structure due to the heat from the flames. A review of the building plans showed that there were several fire exits drawn but not actually constructed. The emergency exits that did exist, however, were locked to prevent theft by employees. As a result of this, bodies were piled up in narrow corridors leading up to the exits where they were attempting to escape. As it turns out, perhaps unsurprisingly, the building was built illegally and not up to proper building codes. There was an immediate public outcry regarding the awful conditions that led to the fire. Prime Minister Chuan Likpai is said to have asked an engineer at the scene, "How could you let this happen? You allow them to run a factory like this without inspection," to which the engineer had nothing to say. The government promised swift action, including by Sanan Kachon Prasart, the industry minister at the time, who stated, "Those factories without a fire prevention system will be ordered to install one, or we will shut them down." The cause of the fire was never conclusively determined. The theories for what started the fires include problems with the electrical system, which was proposed because the fire originated near a large electrical control panel, arson, a carelessly discarded cigarette, or a short circuit igniting synthetic materials used to stuff toys. Despite the fact that the cause was never isolated, a worker by the name of Viraj Yusak was jailed for little more than admitting to smoking a cigarette before the fire, leading to the carelessly discarded cigarette theory of ignition. He was charged and jailed for 10 years in prison. The official inquiry concluded that Kader management was responsible due to the gross violations of safety laws. Criminal charges were pressed against 14 company officials, including the managing director. However, all charges were dropped. In the end, the only penalties leveled against the company was a fine of 520,000 baht. Initially, Kader Toy Company came to an agreement to pay a one-off payment of $4,000 to the family of people killed in the fire and to set money aside for children orphaned by the fire. Finding the settlement was woefully inadequate. A team of trade unions, academics, and other agencies partnered with the victims and their families to put further pressure on the toy company. Caving to the threat of an international boycott, which was attracting media attention, Kader amended the terms. They increased the per-person amount to $12,000. They also agreed to pay outstanding salaries, overtime payments, and other wages to the government to be dispersed to the victims. Finally, they agreed to employ injured workers, relatives of deceased workers, and workers who had been previously employed by Kader Toy Company for at least 3 years, in the event they opened a new business operation. It's difficult to comprehend how little is learned from past tragedies, as history repeats itself in such horrific fashion. As so many companies before them, Kader Toy Factory ignored critical safety measures and put their business over the lives of their workers. Sadly, such negligence and cost-saving measures have been writing their place into history in the blood of their victims. One of the simplest and often overlooked is fire safety preparedness. Just as it was absent in the Kader Toy Factory, it was entirely missed in 1881 in Austria. With basic life-saving measures right at their fingertips, they failed to act. Click here to watch my video on the Ring Theater fire, where a tragic combination of building design flaws and human error resulted in a staggering and avoidable loss of life. Thanks for watching. Until next time.